like Alan Alderton, the perfect golden boy of our school. But Alan? He likes Diana. Rice, the untouchable ice queen. Diana, however, has her eyes set on Charles Collins, the school's notorious bad boy. And Charles? For some inexplicable reason, he likes me. One day, Diana made an outrageous suggestion. Why don't the four of us just be together? Alan nodded after a pause. Ever the reasonable one. If that's the only way we can all find closure, fine. Charles gave his trademark smirk. Sure, whatever. And me? Excuse me? Am I the only sane one here? Despite the absurdity of it all, I gathered my courage and confessed to Alan. With trembling hands, I gave him a love letter. He accepted it gracefully, his long fingers brushing the paper as a dimple appeared on his cheek. Bella Beckinsale, he said softly, his voice kind but firm. Thank you for liking me. But I think we'd make better study partners than anything else. Alan Alderton, always gentle, even in rejection. And yet, it hurt so much I wanted to cry. Alan and I are in the same class. I'm ranked first, and he's a close second. People ship us together, but I know it's one-sided. Forcing a smile, I asked, "Do you like someone else?" If he didn't, maybe I still had a chance. But he nodded. I like Diana. Rice. I could practically hear my heart shattering. Can you keep this a secret, Bella? I nodded, barely holding it together. Why, yes, sure. Diana is stunning and aloof, the kind of beauty that turns heads wherever she goes. She and Alan seem like a perfect match. It explains why Alan always takes the long way around, passing by Diana's class, and why he carried her to the nurse's office when she tripped the other day. But something didn't add up. Diana has been openly chasing Charles Collins, and everyone knows it. People say Diana only softens for Charles. Trying to mask my pain, I smiled. Isn't Diana chasing Charles Collins? Alan's mouth twitched. You're really something, you know that? He walked away without another word. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. The girl he likes doesn't even like him back. A joint gym class brought our two classes together. I lounged under the shade of a tree, pretending to doze off, but my eyes were locked on Alan. He leaned against another tree, a textbook in hand, but his focus kept drifting to Diana. His gaze lingered on her, tinged with sadness. She, however, was busy handing a water bottle to Charles, who had just finished playing basketball. Charles didn't even glance at her. Charles, she's been chasing you forever. Can't you just be nice to her? Someone joked. If you like her so much, why don't you date her? He snapped. Alan shot to his feet, fists clenched, glaring at Charles like he wanted to intervene. Then Diana's voice rang out, cold and clear. Charles Collins, why don't you like me? Am I not good enough for you? Charles let out a derisive laugh. Do I need a reason not to like someone? You. Her frustration was palpable. In front of everyone, Diana suddenly blurted, Is it because you like Bella Beckinsale? What? Heads turned toward me. Charles, who had never once looked my way before, found me immediately. His gaze lingered, then flicked back to Diana. What the hell are you talking about? Diana smirked. Don't play dumb. I've seen your phone. It's full of her pictures, even your wallpaper. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. I froze, closing my eyes tightly, hoping to disappear. Everyone, shut up, Charles barked, his voice uneasy. I stayed still until class ended. A classmate had to nudge me awake, Turns out I had actually dozed off. As I left the gym, whispers followed me. Did you hear? Charles Collins likes Bella Beckinsale. Is it true? Diana said it herself. My hands paused over my notebook, but I didn't react. Isn't Diana chasing Charles? What's even going on? School queen likes the school tyrant. The tyrant likes the study queen. Does the study queen like Diana? Ugh, this is so messy. Messy doesn't even begin to cover it. The weekend rolled around, and I went to the bookstore for some peace and quiet. I was flipping through a novel when a familiar figure caught my eye. Alan? He turned, a stack of textbooks in his arms, and smiled. Bella? What a coincidence. Here to pick up study guides. I held up the romance novel in my hand. The Duke's Reborn Heiress. Nope, just killing time. How are you always first in the class? He muttered, clearly irritated. Sensing an opportunity, I teased. Diana doesn't like you anyway. Why not give me a shot? He frowned slightly, as if torn. Actually, since Charles doesn't seem to like Diana, I was thinking, I might still have a chance with her. Before I could respond, an angry voice cut in. You too. Charles was standing behind me, disbelief etched on his face. What are you doing here? Alan asked sharply. Charles ignored him, striding toward me instead. You weren't asleep that day, were you? What day? I feigned innocence. I know you were awake, he pressed. I wasn't lying, I countered. I didn't even say what day I meant, he said smugly. He had me cornered. Before the tension could escalate further, Diana walked in, looking surprised. Alan, Bella, Charles? I sighed internally. Great, just great. Within minutes, we ended up at a cafe across the street. Diana glared at me. Alan tried to mediate, and Charles? He just stared at me, looking like he had something to say. I just wanted to talk to her, Charles muttered. Diana snorted. Talk to her, huh? Ignoring her, Charles turned to Alan. What's going on between you two? Nothing, Alan said quickly. Just studying. I plastered on a shaky smile. Yeah, just bumped into each other. Total coincidence. After what felt like an eternity of arguing, we finally unraveled the chaos of this tangled mess. Diana Rice, her eyes full of amusement, reached out and patted my head. So, you like Alan Alderton? Don't worry, I'll keep my distance from him. Just don't try to take Charles Collins from me. Charles immediately snapped. Will you shut up already? Alan, surprisingly sharp-tongued for someone so gentle, retorted. Why are you yelling at Diana? Bella Beckinsale would never like someone like you. Bad attitude and terrible grades. I had never seen Alan so direct, and judging by Charles's slightly deflated posture, neither had he. Standing up to defuse the situation, I muttered, I'm heading home. Charles stood as well. I'll walk you back. No thanks. We barely even knew each other. Diana interjected with a smirk. If he's going, I'm going too. Alan frowned. In that case, I'll come as well. I sighed. Guys. And just like that, the situation descended into chaos again. Diana suddenly burst out laughing. Her smile was dazzling, effortlessly charming. She composed herself and said, How about the four of us stick together? Excuse me. I blinked, utterly dumbfounded. Alan exchanged glances with Diana, then Charles. It seemed the thought of Diana's long-standing crush on Charles crossed his mind. He sighed and said, "If we want everyone to get what they want, maybe this is the only solution." What kind of compromise was that? Charles looked annoyed but eventually shrugged. "Fine, whatever. What is wrong with you people?" I said, completely floored. Diana, ever efficient, pulled out her phone. "Let's make a group chat." Charles and Alan agreed immediately. I stayed put, clutching onto my last shred of dignity. Alan, noticing my reluctance, patted my shoulder. "I'll add you. Just join, okay?" Defeated, I sighed. "Fine." The moment I joined, Charles sent me a friend request. Then Diana. "Let's name the group," Alan suggested. Diana, ever dramatic, proposed, "For God's Squad." I scoffed. "How about Funeral Family?" A fitting tribute to this love rectangle. In the end, we settled on For Love. Don't ask me why. Back home, I headed straight for the kitchen, where my mom was cooking. "Mom, good news and bad news." She glanced up. "Bad news first." "I'll start with the good news. I'm dating someone." She raised an eyebrow. "And the bad news?" "It's a little crowded." My mom paused, spatula in hand. "Are you still going to date, then?" "Yes, but I can only date one person at a time." At school, things grew even weirder. Alan stopped calling me classmate and began using my name directly. Charles started sending me messages, little check-ins like "Have you eaten?" or "Good luck on the test." Diana even gave me one of her hair clips, claiming, "We're all in this together, no need to be formal." This so-called relationship? Yeah, it was something else. One afternoon, I turned to Alan during lunch break and asked, "Want to head to the cafeteria together?" He looked up from his phone. "I just messaged Diana, but she hasn't replied." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Charles. "Want to grab lunch?" I stared at my phone, unsure of how to reply. Then the For Love chat popped up. Diana had sent a screenshot of her messages. "Want to grab lunch?" Charles's reply. "No, I already asked Bella Beckinsale." Seriously? They're in the same class. Why are they texting each other instead of talking? A second later, Diana tagged me. "Mind if I join you?" Alan chimed in. "The more, the merrier." Charles added, "You haven't replied to me yet." I set my phone down, exhaling sharply. Enough. I've had enough of this madness. Diana, ever cheeky, typed, "What's the point of a group chat if we can't settle things here?" Charles shot back, "Practice what you preach." Diana replied, "Fine. From now on, everything goes through the group. Remember, we're all a couple." Charles, "You might want to look up what a couple means." Diana, "Fine. We're all in a relationship." Watching their banter made me chuckle. They're kind of funny together. Alan glanced at me, his expression unreadable. I quickly covered my mouth, realizing I had spoken out loud. Let's go before lunch runs out." At the cafeteria, we ate in awkward silence. Everyone avoided eye contact as we grabbed food. At the last second, Charles reached for my tray and added an extra drumstick. "Thanks," I said quietly. Both Alan and Diana gave him looks of betrayal. Charles rolled his eyes and grudgingly got them drumsticks too. We sat down, negotiating seating arrangements like diplomats at a peace treaty. In the end, the setup was this: Diana, Alan, Charles, me. Everyone was finally satisfied. Alan broke the silence first. Did you figure out the final question from this morning's quiz? Yeah, I said. His expression lit up with curiosity. Was it about drawing an auxiliary line? I nodded. Yep. From point A. Aha. To point E, he asked, a little too eagerly. I hesitated. Actually, AF. He froze. What? I told him the answer, and his face fell. Great. I got it wrong. Charles, who had been silent until now, groaned. Can we just eat without the nerd talk? Diana added, there's no two-person world allowed in this group. Me. I watched silently as Diana Rice choked on her soup. Alan Alderton was quick to react, gently patting her back. Take it slow, he said in that soft, steady voice of his. When Diana looked up, their eyes met. And just like that, the air between them shifted. Subtle, but unmistakably charged. I cleared my throat, cutting through the moment. Hey, remember, this is a group of 4. Yeah, 4. No duos allowed. No exceptions. Somehow, I was starting to come to terms with this bizarre arrangement. It wasn't normal, but nothing about this situation ever was. After lunch, we headed back to class. Alan and I walked together, while Diana paired up with Charles. All right, I'll admit it. I like Alan Alderton. A lot. He's smart, kind, ridiculously good-looking, and always ready to help others. What's not to like? We're both class reps, which means we spend a lot of time together, especially when delivering homework to the office. Every single time, without fail, he'd take the massive stack of papers from my arms, like it was the most natural thing in the world. If this were a romance novel, it would be hard not to read too much into moments like that. But I know better. That's just who Alan is. Pure and simple. A good guy. Did I mention he's also the class president? Yeah, he's kind of perfect. Alan Alderton was the type of guy who'd go out of his way to buy medicine for a sick classmate. He'd clean the chalkboard without a word if the assigned student forgot. During PE, if a girl looked unwell but was too shy to approach the teacher, he'd quietly arrange for her to skip practice. When a transfer student seemed isolated, Alan made sure a group of friendly classmates reached out to make them feel welcome. He was like a quiet little sun, shining warmth on everyone around him without asking for anything in return. But do I love him? Not really. I just want to date someone. Life is boring, and Alan seemed like the best candidate. We're already friends, so it'd be easy. Honestly, I'm over it. This dreary existence is driving me insane. I need a boyfriend, or I might actually lose it. But now, I'm stuck choosing between 3 people. Since we're all technically dating each other, I don't even know if it's about picking someone anymore. It feels more like assigning roles. The thing is, what started as a silly idea became serious to the others. And it's terrifying. At lunch, Charles Collings bought chicken legs for all of us. Diana Rice brought breakfast for Charles, but there were extra portions for me and Alan too. Alan, not to be outdone, bought 4 identical workbooks, one for each of us. I think they've all lost their minds. The madness started spreading outside our group, too. In less than a week, rumors were everywhere. Charles changed his profile picture to one of my photos. His wallpaper? Also me. It wasn't even subtle. Not to be left out, Diana took a photo of Charles playing basketball. Admittedly, he looked pretty good, and made it her profile pic. Then Alan joined in, using a photo of Diana as his avatar, though he kept it understated by picking a shot of her back. Meanwhile, my profile picture was still a cartoon character. It made me pause. For Love lit up with a notification. Diana tagged me. You're the last one. Join the aesthetic, please. Me, you're all insane. I'm starting to think I'm the only normal one here. This was spiraling out of control, so I decided to have an honest talk with Alan. I only confessed to you on a whim, I admitted. I just wanted to date someone, and you seemed like the best option. Alan frowned. So you were playing with my feelings? No. I waved my hands frantically. You rejected me, and I knew you didn't like me back. But I still chose you first, which means I think really highly of you. You're practically perfect in my eyes. He didn't seem convinced. I kept going, trying to sound as earnest as possible. Look, I wasn't lying when I said I like you. Everyone likes you. Even the teachers love you. We've been classmates for over a year. There's no romance, sure, but at least there's friendship. Can't you help me out for the sake of that? He studied me for a moment before nodding calmly. All right, I get it. Get what? Thanks for thinking so highly of me, he said with a faint smile. But if you want to break things off, you'll have to tell the others yourself. And keep in mind, this isn't just about you and me. You've roped in 3 people. If you back out, Charles will back out. If Charles backs out, Diana will be heartbroken. And I'll end up with no girlfriend either. What the? You'd be hurting all 3 of us, he concluded with unnerving logic. I sighed deeply. Look up. He blinked as I snapped a photo of him and set it as my profile picture. Life was officially unbearable. Diana decided it was time for us to meet the parents. What? Why? I panicked. We're not even in a stable relationship. Who introduces their high school flings to their family? But my protests didn't matter. On Saturday, Charles showed up in a Maserati to pick up me and Alan. Apparently, he's loaded. Charles sat in the passenger seat, while Alan and I were crammed in the back. The driver, clearly amused, said, "This is the first time the young master has let anyone ride in his car." I narrowed my eyes. Don't tell me this is the cheapest car in your garage? Before Charles could answer, the driver grinned. Oh no. This is the one he takes when he wants to show off. Great. Rich people. When we arrived at Diana's house, she took one look at the Maserati and groaned. Ugh, I can't stand people who show off. Her mom greeted us warmly. Too warmly. I don't think she had any idea what kind of relationship we were in. Alan, ever polite, greeted her before retreating to the couch with his usual calm demeanor. He sat there, perfectly composed, while I wished the floor would swallow me whole. Meanwhile, Charles charmed Diana's mom like a pro. They were chatting like old friends in no time. Diana, I whispered, desperate for an escape. Can we just hang out in your room? She shrugged. Sure. Her room was chaotic. There was a little boy playing video games on a computer, a messy bed, and clothes strewn everywhere. Diana immediately yelled, Joey.Rice, did you touch my stuff again? The boy didn't even look up. Get out, I'm busy. Fuming, Diana stormed over and shut his computer off. I told you not to touch my things. Joey screeched like a banshee and threw himself on the floor, kicking and screaming. "Mom, Diana's bullying me." Diana rolled her eyes before giving him a solid shove out the door and locking it behind him. "Sorry about that," she said, unfazed. "He's my stepbrother. Total brat. Don't bother with him." I glanced around the room. Among the chaos, the only things that seemed to belong to Diana were a few photos on the wall. One of her in a dance costume with her parents. Judging by the man in the picture, her real dad wasn't the same as Joey's. Before I could say anything, Diana pulled a box out of her closet filled with snacks. "Take whatever you want." I hesitated, finally picking a single piece of candy. "I don't usually eat snacks." "Suit yourself," she said, munching on a bag of chips. By the time we went back downstairs, Joey was squatting in front of Charles, tears streaming down his face as Charles made him hold a squat position. "Real men train hard," Charles lectured, flexing his muscles for emphasis. Joey looked like he wanted to evaporate. Diana's mom, however, seemed thrilled. "Listen to your brother, Joey." Alan, ever the peacekeeper, placed a book on Joey's head to help him balance. For a moment, watching the four of us interact, I almost thought, maybe this weird little group isn't so bad. Diana's mom insisted we stay for dinner, but Charles declined politely. "Thanks, but we've got plans." I've never been so relieved in my life. Charles Collings offered to drive me home, but as fate would have it, we ran into my mom at the entrance to my neighborhood. "Sweetheart, is this your friend?" she asked with a bright smile. "No." I slammed the car door shut, trying to block Alan Alderton from view in the back seat. Unfortunately, Charles rolled down his window. "Hello, ma'am." I froze. My mom, of course, beamed at him. "What a handsome young man." "And you're so youthful and beautiful, just like Bella," he replied smoothly. "How is he so good at winning over parents?" My mom was absolutely charmed. "Why don't you come in? I'll cook something delicious for you." "No need, ma'am," Charles said with a grin. "I'll come over once Bella agrees to it." I smiled stiffly and hissed drive. Now, when we got home, my mom gave me a knowing look. "He doesn't look like the guy in your profile picture." I've had enough. Truly, enough. Later that day, Charles surprised us by taking us to a house near the school. I had it cleaned up. "For rooms. Perfect for all of us," he said casually. "Don't worry, it's been sitting empty for a while." I stared at him, horrified. "Wait, are you suggesting we live together? My parents would literally break my legs." Charles blinked at me in confusion, then waved his hand dismissively. "What? I'm not living here either. This place is way too small for me." Alan added, "I'm not staying either. I go home every night." Relief washed over me. Thank God. Diana, however, shrugged. "I'll stay." "You're really moving in?" I asked, shocked. She patted my head like I was a child. "Relax. You can hang out here during lunch or nap between classes. It's closer to school anyway." I suddenly remembered her chaotic home with Joey. Maybe this wasn't such a bad idea after all. Charles pulled me aside to show me the last room. "I had this one designed especially for you. Go on, take a look." I opened the door, and my jaw dropped. The room was an explosion of pink and plush. A massive princess bed with pink curtains, a giant stuffed bear, shelves lined with figurines, and even plushies hanging from the windows. Charles grinned. I'll have the walls painted pink during the next break. No need, I said quickly. Really no need. He frowned. Diana said girls love cute stuff. I forced a polite smile. I do like dolls, but this is a bit much. At some point, Alan wandered over and peeked in. Why are the other rooms so plain? He asked. Charles immediately reverted to his usual attitude, shooting him a disdainful look. Be grateful you even have a room. I sighed and looked around. On one of the bookshelves, I spotted my favorite novels, manga, and a surprising amount of merchandise I actually liked. Curious, I opened the wardrobe, only to be buried under a cascade of dolls. Do you like it? Charles asked, grinning like a kid who just aced show and tell. I stared at the room, then back at him. His expression was so earnest I couldn't bring myself to be honest. It's great. Thank you. Back in the kitchen, Alan and Diana were rummaging through the fridge. Why do you have so much food stocked? Alan asked. Oh, the housekeeper thought I was moving in and had the chef prepare it, Charles replied. Might as well eat here instead of going to the cafeteria. We all agreed to stay for lunch, until the inevitable question arose. Who knows how to cook? Charles asked. Because I've never stepped foot in a kitchen. Where's your chef? Diana asked. I told him to leave because I didn't think we'd need him, Charles said with a shrug. All eyes turned to me. Then, just as quickly, they turned away. Never mind, Diana muttered. What's that supposed to mean? I snapped. Do I look like I can't cook? Diana stood. I can try, but no promises it'll be edible. Alan stepped forward. I'll do it. Lunch ended up being a simple salad. Diana wasn't impressed. Alan, you should just cook for me every day, she teased. Charles, ever the critic, commented. It's okay, I guess. Alan replied calmly. Not everyone has a personal chef to compare it to. Ignoring them, I focused on eating. Charles declared the house our new base of operations. Honestly, it felt more like we were preparing for a secret mission. On Friday, Charles came to my classroom after school. My family just opened a new amusement park. Want to check it out? This is what rich people are like. Even their invitations are extravagant. Just the two of us? I asked hesitantly. Yeah. Didn't we have a rule against one-on-one outings? I wasn't sure why Charles liked me, but being alone with him felt awkward. Then again, being with all of them felt awkward too. If I had to suffer, I wasn't going down alone. I pulled Alan into the conversation. Charles invited me to the amusement park. Want to come? No. How can you say no to a free trip? He hesitated. Fine, but you'll have to help me. With what? My parents want me to stay home and study. If you explain, they'll probably let me go. Why me? Because they like you. I don't even know them. They know you, and they like you because you're first in the class. Eventually, I convinced Alan's parents, claiming we were going to the library. When we arrived at the amusement park, Charles was visibly surprised. You invited me. I invited Alan, I explained. Alan invited Diana. For people nice and even. Diana smirked. Didn't think the nerd duo would show up. Charles scoffed. Don't lump them together. Bella's top of the class by 30 points. Her test scores only prove she's unstoppable. Diana rolled her eyes. She's amazing, sure. But why are you acting like it's your accomplishment? I swatted the back of Charles's head. Stop trying to stir things up between me and Alan. At the park, Charles and Alan tackled every ride they could, while Diana and I sipped boba and basked in the sun. Pirate ship? Charles asked. Whatever, Diana replied. Nope, I said. Too scary. Roller coaster? Charles pressed. Still scary. In the end, the boys rode everything together while we stuck to our corner. But Charles wasn't having it. For the haunted house, he announced, everyone is going in. He hesitated, then added awkwardly, Bella, if you're scared, you can stick with me. Alan Alderton seemed like the more reliable option. After all, we'd been classmates for over a year, and I felt more comfortable around him. But when it came to sheer physical presence, Charles Collins looked like the kind of guy who could punch 3 ghosts into oblivion with one swing. The problem was, I'm a total coward. So when I turned a corner and came face to face with a particularly terrifying ghost, I let out a scream so loud it probably scared the ghost too. Ah! By the time we stumbled out of the haunted house, I had completely latched onto Diana Rice like a sloth clinging to a tree. For the record, it's rare to find a girl as tall as Diana, and just as rare to find someone as short as me. Diana sighed, exasperated. It's all fake. Get off me already. As soon as I let out a relieved sigh, I turned and caught sight of Alan Alderton's pale face, and Charles Collins, who looked just as green. And then I saw it. Their hands were clasped together. What the? Let go already, Charles grumbled, shaking his hand in an attempt to free it. Seriously, man. I'm begging you. Alan stayed silent, his lips pressed into a thin line. Beads of sweat dotted his forehead. Something was definitely off. Charles raised an eyebrow. Dude, you didn't even flinch when we bumped into that green-haired monster earlier. Wait a second. A grin spread across his face. Don't tell me you're afraid of the dark? Oh, that's hilarious. Enough, Diana cut in, her voice sharp. Charles clicked his tongue but stopped laughing. I stepped closer, concern gnawing at me. Hey, are you okay? Alan finally let go of Charles's hand, grabbed a water bottle, and took a long sip. Slowly, his tense shoulders relaxed, and some color returned to his face. It's getting late, he said calmly, like nothing had happened. We should head home. I frowned. Are you sure? Maybe Charles should drive you. Why me? Charles interrupted, looking offended. You have a car, I pointed out. Our little group had become something of a spectacle. Everyone at school knew about the 4 of us by now. Rumors were everywhere, fueled by our constant proximity to one another. Some shipped me with Alan. Others shipped me with Charles. A bold few shipped Diana with both of them. And then there were the chaos enthusiasts who claimed I had a thing for Diana because we once went to the bathroom together. Someone even declared the 4 of us collectively insane. That last one? They might be onto something. But if anyone's normal here, it's me. The other 3? Definitely not. Alan didn't seem bothered by the gossip at all. He even moved his desk next to mine. My former desk partner left with a suspiciously pleased expression, muttering something about needing to observe my study habits. To his disappointment, all he saw was me reading novels during class while he did problem sets. I tried to reason with him. Alan, don't you get tired of doing so much work? He sighed, sounding utterly defeated. You wouldn't understand. Balance is the key to productivity, I offered. You wouldn't understand. It's bad for your health to overwork yourself. You wouldn't understand. Then the monthly test results came in. I was first as always. Alan predictably was second. Alan stared at the rankings and muttered, "I don't understand." During a self-study period, I was sneaking in a few chapters of my novel when Alan finally snapped. "Do you have to do this every single time?" "I can't help it," I admitted with zero guilt. "Do you have any idea how frustrating you are?" "I may be frustrating, but this book isn't." "I'm switching seats back," he threatened. "You're too distracting. Don't you dare." Alan's obsession with beating me hit a new level of intensity before midterms. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes, and relied on coffee just to get through morning classes. I couldn't take it anymore. "Do you really want to be first that badly?" I asked one day. He didn't answer, but the determination in his eyes said it all. Fine. If it mattered that much to him, I'd let him have it. I'd deliberately hold back on my score this time. What's one test, anyway? But before I could even attempt to underperform, disaster struck. Alan was caught cheating. During the test, a teacher found a phone in Alan's pocket. He was immediately escorted out of the classroom, his spotless reputation in tatters. The entire school was buzzing with gossip. Alan Alderton, the golden boy, accused of cheating? It felt like the world had flipped upside down. But I didn't believe it for a second. Alan wouldn't cheat. He was too serious, too proud. Maybe he forgot to turn in his phone, or maybe someone had planted it on him. After the test, he was taken home by his parents. The school issued a formal reprimand and suspended him for a week. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Alan of all people. It didn't make sense. Sitting in class, I pulled out his notebook to take notes for him. When I opened it, a folded piece of paper slipped out. A psychological evaluation. My throat tightened as I quickly slid the paper back in and closed the notebook. I sent a message to Alan Alderton. He never replied. I even tagged him in the group chat, but there was no response. Diana.Rice eventually chimed in. "He can't answer right now." Her tone seemed off, like she knew something I didn't. And knowing how Alan felt about her, I figured she probably did. Charles, on the other hand, was blunt as always. He cheated. Who's to blame but himself? Alan wouldn't cheat, I fired back, frustration bubbling up. Worried Alan might see the messages and feel worse, I created a new group chat, just the three of us. Alan didn't cheat. I'm really worried something happened to him. I didn't dare mention the psychological evaluation I'd found. But if there was one thing I knew about Alan, it was that his parents were impossibly strict. Whatever punishment he was facing now, it wasn't going to be easy. Charles's reply was as unbothered as ever. "Why do you care so much? It's not like it's happening to you. We're all connected. Can't I care about my classmate?" I typed back, a little too sharply. "Fair enough." Diana was quieter, but when she spoke up, her words hit harder. His parents have really high expectations. If he doesn't perform, they punish him. No meals, sometimes worse. I don't know the full extent, but it's bad. So that's why he pushes himself so hard. It didn't seem fair. Alan was already incredible. He could get into any university he wanted. What more could his parents possibly expect? After school, we gathered at Charles Collings' house. He crossed his arms, looking awkward. Just to be clear, I'm not worried about him or anything. This is my house, and I came here to hang out. Diana smirked. Sure, let's go with that. Keep acting all tough. I leaned forward, ignoring their banter. Enough. Can we just talk about what's actually going on? Diana let out a long sigh, leaning back in her chair. I met Alan during our freshman year at the school talent show. We were co-hosting the event and had to run through our lines the night before. He stayed late to rehearse, and that's when his mom showed up. Her expression darkened as she continued. She thought we were on some kind of date. Called me a bad influence and said I looked, well, let's just say suspicious. Then, when she found out I was in class 7, she forbade him from hanging out with low-achieving students. I winced. Ouch. The worst part? Alan didn't say a word to defend me, Diana said, her voice sharp. Not one word. The next day, he didn't even show up for the event. The school had to scramble and find a senior to replace him. I thought back to that year. Alan had taken 3 days off around that time. The teachers told us he was sick. Diana shrugged. He came to apologize later, but I couldn't let it go. We ended up arguing. That's when I saw the bruises on his arm. They were bad. Charles, who had been scrolling aimlessly on his phone, slammed it down on the table. That's it. I've had enough of this nonsense. He grabbed his phone, dialing a number. Erica, I need all the details on someone. 3 minutes. There was a pause on the other end. Details on who, sir? Doesn't matter. Just do it. Charles snapped. Sir. 3 minutes isn't exactly. Figure it out. 30 minutes later, Charles shared a file in our group chat. It was about Alan's older brother, Gary Alderton. Alan had mentioned once that I reminded him of his brother. Now I finally understood what he meant. Gary was a prodigy, a genius who had taken the college entrance exams at 14. He scored near-perfect marks but turned down offers from top universities to repeat high school. His family assumed he was aiming for Harvard. But the next headline about Gary came the night before his second set of exams. He jumped to his death. The file listed his achievements: Math Olympiad champion, award-winning violinist, Go tournament finalist. The kind of resume that would make anyone feel like a failure by comparison. Compared to him, I was, well, let's just say I was barely trying. Even flipping over felt like too much effort. Everyone used to envy the Alderton family for having such a perfect son. Now that perfection seemed like a curse. The Alderton family had always been proud of Gary Alderton, parading him through interviews like a trophy. But after his death, the whispers and judgmental stares from their community drove them to move away. That's when everything changed for Alan. Once an average student, he suddenly transformed into a top achiever. Without his brother's exceptional talents in extracurriculars, Alan had only one option: excel academically. On Saturday morning, I knocked on the Alderton family's front door. Alan's mother, a poised and elegant woman, greeted me with a welcoming smile. Hello. Can I help you? Hi, I'm Bella Beckinsale, Alan's classmate. I brought some assignments he missed. Her warmth caught me off guard, a stark contrast to what Diana had described. Oh, of course. Come in, Bella. She ushered me into their pristine living room and handed me a glass of juice. I've heard your name before. Your teachers say you're an excellent student. Thank you, I said, awkwardly sipping my drink. Is Alan home? I was hoping we could head to the library together. He's missed a few classes, and I thought we could study. She hesitated, glancing toward the stairs. He should be in his room. Let me show you. I followed her up to the second floor. She opened Alan's door, revealing a meticulously clean, empty room. Oh, she said with a small frown. I think he might be at the neighbor's house. You can wait here if you'd like. Feel free to browse his books. I'll go find him. Before I could protest, she left, heading down the stairs. Except, she didn't go toward the door. She turned left. That wasn't the way out. My stomach twisted. Alan wasn't at the neighbor's house. He was somewhere in this house, likely behind one of those closed doors on the first floor. His mom just didn't want me to see something. Left alone, I glanced around Alan's room. It was spotless. A bookshelf stood against one wall, filled with textbooks and study guides, far more than I owned. Next to his desk was a box filled with piles of papers. One stack completed, the other untouched. A schedule was pinned to the wall. Wake up. 5 a.m. Bedtime. 11:30 p.m. Assuming he fell asleep immediately, he was running on less than 5 hours a night. If he ever had insomnia, he'd be pulling all-nighters. On the bedside table was a framed photo of two boys. The younger one looked like Alan, and the older one was undoubtedly Gary. The door creaked open behind me, and Alan walked in, pale and tired-looking, his long sleeves pulled low over his wrists. "You're here?" he asked flatly. I waved weakly. "Hi." He said nothing, leaning against the doorframe. "You wanna go out?" I tried to sound casual. Maybe explore with Dora or something? He let out a quiet sigh, but we both put on our backpacks and headed downstairs. When we stepped outside, we ran into Diana and Charles waiting by the curb. Alan blinked, momentarily surprised, but said nothing. We drove to Charles's house. It was the safest place since his parents weren't home. Alan was silent the entire ride, leaning his head against the window. His usual warm, sunny demeanor had dimmed into something shadowy and withdrawn. When we arrived, Charles's butler nearly teared up. "Master Charles, is this the first time you've brought friends home?" Why did that line sound so familiar? Inside, Diana wasted no time. "Take off your shirt." Alan immediately stepped back. "What the hell?" "Forget it," I said quickly, stepping between them. "If he doesn't want to, we're not forcing him." Whatever was in that mysterious room at the Alderton house, I decided I didn't want to know. Not if Alan wasn't willing to talk about it. "I just want to ask you about the cheating thing," I began, trying to keep my voice even. Before I could continue, Alan spoke up. "I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat?" Charles tossed him some bread, and Alan devoured it in silence before promptly falling asleep on the couch. While Alan slept, the three of us killed time playing cards. Aunt Maria brought out fruit, then drinks, glancing at Alan with mild concern. "Master Charles, your friend seems to have a fever," she remarked. "What?" Charles asked, confused. "You mean Diana?" "No, your other friend." On the couch, we stared at Alan, still dead to the world. "How long has he been burning up?" Charles demanded. Aunt Maria shrugged. "No idea, but it's been a while." Charles immediately called a doctor. Within the hour, Alan was resting in a guest room, hooked up to an IV drip. "It's nothing serious," the doctor said, annoyed at being summoned. But he's got a lot of old injuries, and the fever's from an infected wound. When Alan woke up, Diana and Charles were busy arguing over their card game, sticky notes plastered on their faces. "You're cheating!" Diana cried, glaring at Charles. "Not cheating," Charles retorted smugly. "It's cold memory." Alan sat up groggily, rubbing his temples. "I'm hungry." Again. Once he'd eaten, I finally asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "Alan, I don't believe you cheated. So who's trying to set you up? I can help figure it out." His expression didn't change, but his tone was sharp. "No one's setting me up. I cheated." "What?" "I cheated, Bella." "What's so hard to believe?" He leaned back, looking me straight in the eye. "You're a genius." "I'm not. For you, the only limit is how many questions fit on the paper. For me, it's a mountain I can't climb. After the last test, when you beat me by 35 points, I realized I had no chance unless I cheated." Charles groaned and leaned against Diana. "You're making us look bad, dude. Now we both feel like idiots." Diana rolled her eyes and sat next to me. "I'm not the idiot. You are." I wanted to argue, to tell Alan that he was pushing himself too hard and setting impossible expectations. But I thought about his parents and stayed silent. Alan spoke again, his voice quieter. "You know, you remind me of someone." "Your brother," I said softly. "Yeah." He looked away. Gary was a genius too, but he was tired all the time. My parents signed him up for everything. Tutors, competitions, whatever they could find. He loved cooking, though. Even when it was awful, he'd make me meals and share his treats. Alan's voice cracked slightly. The day he died, he promised we'd play after he finished his practice test. He sat at his desk while I read comics on the floor. Then he stood up, looked at me, and I asked him if he finished his test. Alan's hands trembled. He didn't answer. He just walked to the balcony and jumped. I felt a twinge of sadness. Alan Alderton, Maybe I shouldn't have been reading comics in front of him that day, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Bella Beckinsale, you and my brother were both geniuses. But I'm not. You'll never understand how much effort I have to put in, or how exhausting it is." His gaze hardened as his words cut deeper. "Sometimes I really hate you. You manage to get perfect grades while goofing off. Your parents don't push you, and you still succeed." Charles Collings slammed his hand on the table and stood up. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, chill, man. I get that you're upset, but what does any of this have to do with her?" I blinked, steadying myself. "You hate me?" Alan didn't answer. "Alan Alderton," I said, my voice sharper now. "I hate you too." "Great," he shot back. "Who cares?" He only saw my grades. He never saw the parts of me that weren't put together. I've been a mess my whole life. I hated homework and got detention regularly. Sure, I learn quickly, but I have zero patience and even less focus. I can't stick with anything for long. I'm the kind of person who'd ditch a project halfway to go do something more fun. Who'd trust me to succeed at anything long term? I can barely sit still in an exam room for an hour and a half without losing my mind. That's how little tolerance I have for monotony. I grabbed my bag and slung it over my shoulder. "I'm going home." Diana Rice raised a brow. "You're leaving?" "Just like that. What else would I do? Looking at him just pisses me off." As I turned to leave, My eyes caught on the notebook lying on the sofa. Oh, right. The notes I'd been taking for him. I didn't want him to know I'd uncovered his secret, so I'd even bought a new notebook to keep it hidden. Now, I shoved it into my bag without a second thought. I've never been the note-taking type anyway. No way I'd let him keep them now. Not even if I gave them to a dog first. When I got home, I changed my profile picture back to Cherry Maruko. Screw him. Seriously. On Monday, I walked into school fully prepared to request a new seat. Then I thought, why should I have to move? So instead, I dragged Alan Alderton's desk to the far side of the room. That seemed fair. By the time he showed up, the desk was already gone. He stood in the empty space for a long moment, frozen. I didn't say a word. I didn't even look up. Then, he placed a shopping bag on my desk. I didn't move. Next came a box of cupcakes. Still, no reaction. Finally, he set down a cup of milk tea. I'm sorry, he said, his voice soft but desperate. I didn't mean what I said that day. I wasn't thinking clearly. It was all just heat of the moment nonsense. He paused, waiting for a response. When I gave none, he added, I don't hate you. Not even a little. I glanced up at him, briefly, and shrugged. Oh, I really don't hate you, he repeated, a little more earnestly now. You're like my brother. In my heart, he was untouchable, and so are you. Another quick glance. What does that have to do with me? Please, he begged, his voice faltering. Don't stay mad at me. I'm not mad. He clearly didn't believe me, shifting nervously. So, can I move my desk back now? I gave him a nod. As he walked off, I peeked into the bag out of curiosity and quickly stuffed it back. It was the special edition novel I'd been eyeing for weeks. Signed by the author, no less. When Alan returned, he started to push his desk up against mine, but I blocked the gap with a textbook. He looked at me, confused. I said I'm not mad. I didn't say I wasn't holding a grudge. We're still fighting. He frowned, clearly struggling to understand my logic, and stood there pondering for a while. Long enough for me to sip the milk tea, eat a bite of the cupcake, and tuck the novel into my desk. Finally he nodded, sort of. Alan had been stripped of all his school titles, but he acted like nothing had changed. He still bent down to pick up someone's dropped pen, straightened a teetering stack of books on a nearby desk, and answered a classmate's question with the same patience as ever. He even went up to the blackboard and erased it after class. Despite the cheating scandal, no one brought it up. Everyone treated him exactly the same. Meanwhile, I remembered that the homeroom teacher had assigned me to act as class president in Alan's place. Me? In charge? I don't even bother picking up a toppled trash can. I decided to pretend I'd forgotten. Alan, on the other hand, was surprisingly attentive toward me. Every day, a small, carefully wrapped bag would appear on my desk. One day it was snacks. The next, a hairpin. Today, a collectible figurine. I said nothing. I was curious how long he'd keep this up. I can be very petty. By the 10th day, he finally cracked. Bella Beckinsale, you still haven't forgiven me, have you? Why? I asked, barely looking at him. My brother came to me in a dream last night, he said solemnly. He told me that if I didn't make things right, he'd come and take me with him. Okay. On the 11th day, he gave me a bracelet. By the 15th, I noticed something different. The gap between our desks was gone. You, he hesitated, as if not trusting his eyes. I replied with a nod. You don't have to force yourself, he said quickly. I know it was my fault. I met his gaze and smiled faintly. Funny, I had a dream about your brother last night too. His eyes widened. What did he say? He told me, my brother's a good kid. I'm sorry on his behalf. Please don't hold it against him. Alan was quiet for a long moment, trying to process my words. I reached into my bag and pulled out a shopping bag, setting it on his desk. His bag. Inside were 2 thick notebooks, filled to the brim. I spent the past 2 weeks organizing these for you, I explained. Every key point, every problem type, and every topic we haven't covered yet. What shows up often, what rarely does, and what you can completely ignore. Everything's there. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the notebooks. For the last math question, I added, it's always the same kind of problem. I broke it down step by step. If you still can't get it, just skip it. It's not worth stressing over. Alan's voice wavered. If I had given up halfway, would you still have finished this? I would have, I said calmly. But you'd only get it when you quit. Not a second earlier. He looked at me, half laughing, half crying, as I casually tossed a couple of candies into my mouth. I caught him eyeing my candy jar and smirked. Taking someone else's candy without asking is a surefire way to get a mouthful of cavities. He withdrew his hand with a defeated sigh. After that day, I noticed Alan Alderton's profile picture had changed. It was now an unflattering landscape photo, so bad it almost seemed intentional. Every day at noon, we gathered at our secret base. It had started as Charles Colling's house, then became the hangout spot, and finally the secret base. Very covert, very exclusive, so thrilling. Alan took over cooking duty. That smells amazing. What is it? Charles asked, sniffing the air dramatically. I sipped from my thermos without answering. Diana Rice gave me a sharp look. Bella, you're not allowed to hoard all the good stuff. I sighed. It's just some soup my mom made. Charles's eyes lit up. Our mom made it? Nice. Our mom. Reluctantly, I poured a little into cups for everyone. Diana took a sip and sighed contentedly. Our mom's cooking is incredible. She glanced at Alan, who was quietly working in the kitchen. Alan, isn't our mom's cooking the best? Alan hesitated, his ears turning slightly pink. Yeah. Who's better? Diana pressed. Alan had his limits. He wasn't about to fake that level of shamelessness. After school, none of us rushed home. Instead, we stayed at the secret base for a study session. Alan called his mom, explaining he was studying with me. She didn't believe him at first, so she demanded a video call. She saw me. She believed him. Satisfied, Alan promptly went to take a nap. He'd worked hard enough. There was no need to sacrifice his health for more study sessions. As for his mental health, he had already started seeing a therapist. Alan was the type to throw himself wholeheartedly into everything. Studying, life, whatever came his way. Meanwhile, Diana and Charles were genuinely trying to study. Wait, Diana suddenly said, looking up from her book. So I can qualify for the arts exam? Charles smirked. And I could study abroad. I snorted, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Wow, Take a look at the guy napping over there and compare it to your slacker attitudes. To gauge their progress, I handed them a set of practice exams. Diana's scores made me pause. Are you sure you haven't been secretly studying? She shrugged. The basic and intermediate questions, which accounted for 70% of the score, were practically flawless. With a bit of focus on the harder questions, she could easily hit 80%, enough to get into a great school. I pay attention in class, Diana explained. Teachers are strict about homework. But during exams, I just don't feel like answering the questions. Why? The better my grades, the higher my mom prices me in her matchmaking plans. No way I'm letting her win that game. Charles groaned. So I'm the only actual failure here? I smirked and patted Diana's head. Good grades, artistic talent, and a pretty face. You're perfect. Then I flipped through Charles's practice test. A sea of red XS. Well, you're healthy, you eat a lot, and you're rich. That's something. Charles. Incredible. During PE, both Class 1 and Class 7 had to run laps together. The two gym teachers stood on the sidelines, delighting in our collective misery. Keep moving. No walking. Pick up the pace, Class 1. Don't fall behind, Class 7. Charles led the pack, sprinting like it was a competition. Alan stuck with the main group, running steadily and seriously. Diana, on the other hand, jogged just enough to avoid being scolded, walking whenever the teachers weren't looking. As for me, I was comfortably seated on the sidelines with a chair I'd brought from the classroom. Keep going. I called out cheerfully. No slacking. My eyes are everywhere. When the session ended, the teachers quickly ditched us to play basketball, their fun clearly over. Still catching her breath, Diana turned to me. Why don't you have to run? I chuckled. Honor student privileges. Alan frowned. Why don't I get those privileges? Charles walked over, holding several bottles of water. Diana, don't think I didn't notice. You ran an extra lap to make it look like you were working harder than you were. Alan blinked in disbelief. You can do that? Charles handed me a bottle of water, but I shook my head and pulled out my thermos. It's chilly, I said, taking a sip. Hot drinks are better. After that, Charles tilted his head, confused, and asked, should you even be having cold stuff right now? I smiled sweetly. Get lost. Popping a piece of candy into my mouth, I took a sip of warm water. Diana and Charles were locked in a heated gaming session while Alan quietly reviewed the notes I had made for him. I was happily lost in my novel. Suddenly, a ball came flying straight at me. Ah! Diana shot to her feet, her expression cold. Who? A group of girls sauntered over to retrieve the ball, one of them smirking. Oops, didn't see you there. Diana's eyes narrowed. Blind. Who are you calling blind? One of the girls snapped. Alan stood up to intervene. Classmate, if you hit someone, you should apologize. The girl sneered. Well, well, Diana. Rice. Juggling Charles Collings and Alan Alderton, aren't you? Just because you're pretty doesn't mean you're anything special. I tugged at Charles's sleeve. Are they from your class? So fierce. He shrugged. Want me to kick them out? No need. The girl's gaze shifted to me, and she smirked. Too bad Charles only likes girls with good grades. Bella Beckinsale, you'd better keep an eye on him, or someone might snatch him away. I gave her an innocent smile. Thanks for the advice, sis. She opened her mouth to retort, but I cut her off, deadpan. Though you seem to have misunderstood. It's not her chasing after Charles. It's Charles chasing after her. Charles. I nodded solemnly, like it was a matter of fact. Really? Not just Charles. Alan too. They even fought over Diana the other day. The girl hesitated. You're kidding, right? I turned to Alan. Am I? Alan sighed. She's not. Charles, now thoroughly resigned, muttered, Yeah, what she said. Diana. Impressive. I casually slung an arm around each of the boys. You two should just give up. Diana's heart belongs to me. Finally, I turned back to the girls, feigning an air of superiority. What can I say? Being pretty is that amazing. The leader's face turned bright red. She mumbled something to another girl in their group, who looked nervous and on the verge of tears. Diana, the trembling girl, stammered, End next period's lab. You can work alone. I'll team up with them. Diana waved it off. Got it. The group left in a hurry. Who's the shy one? I asked. Diana spoke softly. My desk mate. She's nice. Why are they picking on you? Diana chuckled dryly. You don't even know the reason, yet you stood up for me. What if it really was my fault? I straightened my back. Because we're friends. Who are they? Do I know them? No. So obviously, I'm taking your side. And let's not forget, they started it. Diana looked genuinely touched and suddenly hugged me. Wait. Cool it, sister. You're supposed to be the aloof campus queen. She let go as quickly as she had embraced me. I'm not aloof. You're kidding, right? You used to keep to yourself all the time. I wasn't aloof. Nobody wanted to play with me, that's all. Well, now you've got me, I said with a laugh. I'll even go to the bathroom with you. I turned to Charles. From now on, hang out with her in class. Who even isolates people like this? Are we still in middle school? Charles sighed dramatically. Fine. And don't let anyone bully her. He snorted. Bully her? She could flip a desk if she wanted to. You hear me? Got it. And her desk mate, the shy one? Make sure no one bullies her either. Sure. Alan, who had been holding back laughter, finally let it out. Charles glared. What's so funny? I ignored the squabble and added, Oh, and for the lab, you're pairing with Diana. He frowned. It's not that I don't want to. It's just, neither of us knows what we're doing. Alan sighed. Fine, I'll teach you. Later, I created a group chat with just the three of us. I messaged Charles. Why is your class isolating Diana? Charles. How should I know? I thought she liked being alone. Me. You've been classmates for 1.5 years, and you still don't know? Charles. Fine, I'll find out. Using his money solves everything approach, Charles got the answer. Charles. It's complicated. Long story short, Wendy Cranham's boyfriend had a crush on Diana. Wendy found out, and drama ensued. Charles. Diana turned him down, but the guy cheated on Wendy with someone else. Wendy thought it was Diana and started spreading rumors. The guy didn't bother to clear it up, so Diana took the blame. She doesn't even know the full story. Just thinks Wendy's jealous. Me, who's richer? Her or you? Charles. Obviously me. Me. Then fix it, young master. Alan added, Step 1. protect her deskmate. Step 2. Show Wendy the evidence. Step 3. Have Wendy clear up the rumors in class. Problem solved. Me. Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. Charles, are you seriously teaching me how to handle this? Eventually, Wendy apologized to Diana. But things escalated when that cheating ex posted false rumors on the school's confession wall, claiming he'd done stuff with Diana. The post exploded with comments. Should we scare them a little? Charles suggested. Do you want to get arrested? I asked. Fine, I'll bribe them to keep quiet. Alan sighed. Call the cops. Charles froze. You're serious? Alan pulled out his phone. Hello. The post was deleted, and the guy, being a minor, got off with a warning and a public apology to Diana. Alan and I wrote a 3,000-word essay titled, The Harm of Spreading False Rumors About Women, and submitted it to the principal. He dictated. I typed. Alan. Wait, what was that last point again? At the end, we signed it. Bella Beckinsale, Alan Alderton, and Colin Williams. The offender got expelled. Victory! One day in the cafeteria, rumors still buzzed around Diana. It's fine, she said nonchalantly. Ignore them. From a nearby table came a snide remark. Yeah, just ignore it while you two-timing Charles and Alan. So innocent. Why were they acting like I didn't exist? Was I irrelevant in my own friend group? No way. I stood up, one foot on my chair, and declared, Hey, I'm here too. Why can't Diana like me? Diana played along effortlessly. Exactly. I only like girls. Alan and Charles? I turned to her, whispering, Don't overdo it. But before I could stop her, Diana grabbed my face and kissed me on the cheek. My brain short-circuited. Charles screamed, What the hell? Some random onlooker shouted, Bella x Diana is canon. Diana glared at them. Believe it now? The group scattered. Meanwhile, I wiped at my nose and saw blood. Oh no, Diana panicked. Are you okay? I'm sorry. Alan, who has tissues? Charles, forget tissues. Let's get her to the nurse. Stopping the nosebleed was harder than it should have been. Once it finally subsided, I looked at the three of them, one by one. That's it. I'm officially done. I exhaled, shaking my head. You three can keep up your drama. I'm the innocent one here. That day, my sudden nosebleed turned into a school-wide sensation. Did you hear? Bella Beckinsale was so overwhelmed by Diana Dotra's beauty. She got a nosebleed. They say your body doesn't lie. Enough. I've had enough. But my newfound fame came at a price. Both Diana and I were summoned to the teacher's office. The homeroom teacher gave us a pained look. I'll be honest, I can't keep up with you kids these days. I'm not old-fashioned, but you're still young. Focus on your studies, okay? You can worry about other things when you're adults. I wanted to cry. Teacher, it's not what you think. I was just trying to help her. You know how people have been misunderstanding Diana lately. The explanation only made things worse. The teacher nodded solemnly. Ah, so that's it. Helping others is a good trait. You're both good kids. But the look in his eyes said otherwise. He added, I'll need to discuss this with your parents. Diana's family didn't pick up, but my dad came rushing in. Teacher, I'm so sorry for the trouble she's caused. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. The teacher. The school didn't press the issue, but my dad received a friendly suggestion to monitor my relationship issues. On the way home, he asked, "So, did your three-timing finally get exposed?" That night, the Four Loves group chat lit up. Diana.Rice. Charles, is your house secure? Someone's knocking on my door. I'm scared. What if it's some creep? Say something. Me, don't open it. Call the police. Alan Alderton, it's me. Open the door. Diana, what the hell are you doing here this late? Alan, I skipped a practice test today, and my dad tried to hit me. I ran away. Me, bravo. Alan, it took me 17 years to realize you can actually run away from a beating. My dad couldn't catch me. Diana. Impressive. The next morning, Charles finally chimed in. Damn, I fell asleep. My bad. By finals week, Alan had improved by 6 points. A monumental feat given how high his scores already were. This time, he'd balanced studying with rest, and my meticulously prepared notes had made a difference. Proudly, I patted his shoulder. See, one good tip from me beats 10 practice tests. But he didn't look pleased. Why did you skip the exam? So you could finally take first place. Not happy about it. Bella Beckinsale. I don't need this. You're my benchmark, but I want to win on my own terms. Don't go easy on me. I raised an eyebrow, flipping the script. Do you think I'm the kind of person who disrespects my competition? He hesitated, deflated. Of course not. Then something dawned on him, and he muttered to himself, Wait, are you worried about the holidays? About how my parents might give me a hard time? Did you skip the test to make things easier for me? Whoa, calm down, drama queen. You're overthinking this. Then why did you skip it? I had something to do. What kind of something? My aunt had a baby. Oh, wait, what? The new semester brought changes. Diana got moved to class 4. She sneered at Charles. From today onward, we're not the same. Goodbye. Elementary level academics. I handed her a fresh set of notes. With her potential, she could easily make it to class 2. Charles wasn't pleased. Why don't I get any notes? Get a tutor. Start from the basics. Do I get notes after that? If you still need them by then. Sure. And he really did hire a tutor, turning our secret base into a study hall every evening. Diana joined in, sitting in occasionally. Charles smirked. Enjoy the free ride while you can. Treasure it. Diana rolled her eyes. I'm in class 4 now. I don't speak to people from class 7. One day, Alan asked why I'd skipped 2 days of school. Playing hooky. Most people skip class for a period or 2. You're skipping days. Feeling invincible? What's it to you? Don't forget, I'm still top of the class. Oh, by the way, I'll be gone for a few days next month. I'm going on vacation with my mom. Let Diana and Charles know, will you? He blinked. Wait, your parents are letting you just leave? I rolled my eyes. Do you think I'm going alone? My mom's coming too. Cool. Gotta love our mom. Alan, you've changed. You're shameless now. Learned from Charles. He grabbed my candy jar. I snatched it back. Touching my candy without asking? Careful, you'll get a mouth ulcer. Oh. Can I have one then? No. When I came back, the base was in chaos. Charles had gotten into a fight. Again. I was gone for a minute, he huffed, hugging a massive stuffed bear on the couch. This house falls apart without me. I had almost forgotten he was once a schoolyard terror. Around here he acted like a husky, but deep down, he was more like a Tibetan mastiff. Why did you fight? He had it coming. That's not an answer. Because he deserved it. Alan brought over a plate of food, apron off, trying to diffuse the tension. Enough arguing. Let's eat. I shot him a glare. Not until he explains himself. Fine. I'm not hungry. That night, Alan added me to a new group chat. Alan, here's what I found. He sent over a file. Diana. Wait. You have an assistant too? Alan. No, my uncle's a lawyer. Turns out, the guy Charles had fought wasn't from our school but had confronted him on school grounds. The kicker? His name? Harry Hoskins. Charles Collings' half-brother. What a soap opera. Harry Hoskins wasn't exactly a secret love child, but the story didn't lack drama. This all began long before Charles was born, back when the Collings and Johnson families faced a financial crisis that threatened their survival. Desperate, the two companies decided to merge. The most foolproof method? Marriage. Each family had only one child, Charles's parents. At the time, Charles's father was newly engaged to his girlfriend, and Harry's mother was deeply in love with her childhood sweetheart. But the families needed a solid bond to ensure their trust in the merger, so Charles's parents reluctantly agreed to marry. They treated the arrangement as purely transactional, conceiving Charles via IVF. Before Charles was even born, he was guaranteed 70% of the Collings family fortune. He was raised by his grandfather, as his parents had already moved on with their lives. Each had built new, happy families with their original partners. To be fair, Charles's parents weren't unfaithful or indecisive. They simply never loved each other. Their separate families thrived, and they even exchanged polite greetings when they crossed paths. But their shared son, Charles? He was a different story. They didn't abuse him. They didn't even see him enough for that. Instead, they avoided him altogether. He was a walking reminder of their compromises, their shortcomings, and the inconvenient truth they'd rather not face. When Charles entered his first year of high school, his grandfather passed away. Before his death, the old man had insisted on granting the parents their long-desired divorce. A month after the funeral, Harry Hoskins showed up at school. Whatever words were exchanged between the two brothers ended in fists. Harry Hoskins, Charles Collings' half-brother. The family drama was messier than any soap opera. Harry wasn't exactly a hidden child, but the situation was still absurdly complicated. Years ago, long before Charles was born, the Collings and Johnson families faced an economic crisis. Their solution? Merge their businesses. The most reliable way to cement the deal? Marriage. The problem? Each family only had one child, Charles's parents. At the time, Charles's father had just proposed to his girlfriend, and Harry's mother was planning her own wedding to her childhood sweetheart. But the two families demanded a bond they could trust, so Charles's parents reluctantly married, treating it as a pure business arrangement. To fulfill the family obligation, they had Charles through IVF. Before he was even born, Charles was destined to inherit 70% of the Collings family fortune. He was raised by his grandfather, while his parents went on to build lives with their true loves. Each formed happy families of their own, and they were cordial enough to exchange greetings when paths crossed. But their shared son? Charles was another story entirely. They didn't abuse him. Not actively. Instead, they just avoided him. He was a reminder of their compromises, their mistakes, and everything they'd rather forget. When Charles started high school, his grandfather passed away. Before he died, the old man ensured his children could finally divorce and live their separate lives. He also arranged for a trusted estate manager to care for Charles and the family business. A month after the funeral, Harry Hoskins showed up at school. Whatever words were exchanged between the half-brothers, it ended in fists flying. Charles was built like an athlete. Harry, not so much. He took the hits but kept coming back for more. I went through Harry's file. Turns out he wasn't the quiet, misunderstood type. Harry was a regular troublemaker, often in fights, though the only person who consistently landed punches on him was Charles. There was more. Before passing, Charles's grandfather had required his parents to sign an agreement. Charles would inherit 70% of the family assets, and if anything happened to him, it would all go to charity. For as long as Charles lived, the family would benefit from dividends. Harry, despite also being a Collings by blood, was given his mother's surname. In the family's eyes, there would only ever be one Collings child. Perhaps out of guilt, Charles's grandfather doted on Harry excessively, spoiling him with whatever he wanted. We reviewed the security footage. The fight had started behind the school. Charles was coming back from the store when he saw Harry. "What are you doing here again?" Charles growled. Harry smirked, holding up a photo. "Dad took me skiing over winter break." "Did he tell you?" Charles's jaw tightened. "Don't think you're so great just because the old man left you everything," Harry sneered. "Dad's still my dad. Always will be." He waved the photo. "Oh, and about your birthday? Don't bother waiting for him. He's not coming." "That text you got?" "I sent it. Thought it'd be funny to mess with you." Charles tried to hold it together, but when Harry delivered the final blow, he snapped. He charged at him. Thankfully, it was a busy time at the store, and the crowd quickly broke them apart. Harry had a knack for hitting people where it hurt most. This time, though, Harry got away with only minor injuries. Collings' family lawyers were efficient as always, digging up evidence of Harry's history of bullying. Any attempts to pursue charges against Charles fizzled out. I went to find Charles in Class 7. He ignored me. After school, he stayed late to study with Diana. At least he was still focused on schoolwork. He glanced at me once, but I didn't react. Then again. Still nothing. Finally, he muttered, "If someone wanted to apologize to me, I'd probably forgive them." I grabbed my bag and left. "Hey!" Behind me, Diana's laughter echoed through the room. "Don't laugh," Charles shouted, voice tinged with embarrassment. Harry had unintentionally reminded me. Charles's birthday was coming up. We debated over gifts. Diana groaned. "What do you even get someone like him?" "He already has everything." Alan smirked. "A set of practice exams. Be a decent human being," I said, rolling my eyes. By the time his birthday arrived, the preparations were over the top. Charles wasn't around to enjoy them, though. He'd disappeared. The Collings house was in chaos. The butler, usually composed, was pacing frantically. If anything's happened to the young master, how will I face the old master in the afterlife? Calm down. Diana tried to reassure him. Erica, the assistant, was on the phone. Mobilize every security team. Find him now. I rubbed my temples. This is ridiculous. Has anyone called his parents? No one had. We eventually found Charles crouched at the entrance of a small residential complex, staring at the people passing through the gates. Diana, ever blunt, walked right up to him. Stop waiting. She's not coming back. Her words were sharp but true. She moved, I added softly. Erica checked. Charles muttered Harry was right. My parents don't love me. I crouched down beside him, meeting his eyes. You're not wrong. But you've got something even better. A lot of people who do. I pulled out my phone and showed him messages. The butler, Miss Bella, the young master doesn't bring friends home often. Please don't mind his moods. He's just a kid. Erica, Miss Bella, I've planned 3 birthday options. Can you pick one the young master might like? The chef. Alan, the young master keeps saying your cooking's better than mine. What's your secret? Diana rolled her eyes. Enough. Aunt Maria has called me 5 times already. Aunt Maria, we've found him. He's safe now. We'll bring him home soon, I reassured her on the phone while glancing at Charles, who was crouched by the entrance like a forlorn puppy. I ruffled his hair, as if he really were a golden retriever. You know, I said softly, there are plenty of people who love you. Maybe they're not your parents, but they care about you deeply. And your grandfather? He cared so much he even hired the best managers to take care of everything just so you wouldn't have to stress. He just wanted you to have an easy life. Charles blinked, his wide, confused eyes reminding me that he wasn't some tragic figure. He was just stuck in his head for a moment. By the time we got back to the Collings estate, they had rolled out a literal red carpet. Was that necessary? Charles bolted inside and threw himself into the butler's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The family lawyer stepped in next, wagging a finger at Charles like a stern uncle. Master Charles, no more fighting. Next time someone tries to mess with you, just let me know. I'll bury them in legal papers so deep they'll think twice before breathing near you. Charles sniffled, wiping his face with the back of his hand. I won't fight any more. I'm a civilized man now. The birthday party that followed was as over the top as you'd expect from someone with Collings in their name. The cake was taller than me, a whole 6 feet. Young master hasn't laughed this much in ages, the butler said tearfully. I froze, my instincts screaming. Oh no. Alan frowned. What's wrong now? You don't read novels, so you wouldn't understand. The chaos peaked when Charles ended up covered in cake. He emerged from his post-shower haze with wet hair dripping onto his shoulders. Spotting me zoning out, he smirked. What, mesmerized by my good looks? I barely registered his words before feeling a familiar warmth trickling from my nose. Oh no, not again. Uncle, 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 Charles shrieked, summoning the doctor in a panic. Meanwhile, Diana rummaged through drawers like a woman possessed. Paper, tissue, something. By the time we stopped the nosebleed, Charles handed me a cup of warm water, looking genuinely concerned. I didn't even kiss you. What is wrong with you? Diana shot him a suspicious glance. You sure you didn't expose anything you weren't supposed to? Charles gasped, clutching his chest. What kind of person do you think I am? I'm modest. Alan, silent until now, grabbed my face and examined me closely, his brows furrowed. Are you okay? Seriously, what's going on? I gave them all a sheepish smile. It's nothing. Just the dry air. Raising my glass, I declared, everyone drink more water. Stay hydrated. On the way home, the butler sent 2 bodyguards to escort us. The Collings family truly had a ridiculous amount of security, always lurking in the shadows. Diana and I shared a car. Hey, Mom, no need to pick me up. I'm getting a ride, I said over the phone. Diana sighed enviously. Your mom is the best. I could have her adopt you, I teased. Please. She's already my mom, Diana retorted smugly. A week later, our school announced a city-wide math competition. Alan came bursting out of the office, looking equal parts excited and annoyed. Why didn't you sign up? For what? The math competition. The spot was supposed to be yours, but the teacher said you gave it up. Oh, that. I laughed nervously. Don't laugh. Why? Don't tell me you're giving me a free pass. Don't flatter yourself. I gave him a pointed look. Listen, kid, what's mine is always mine. Before he could feel too smug, I added, and what's not mine? Well, that's yours. He stared, utterly baffled. Do you know how lazy I am? A week of intense prep for this competition? Hard pass. Be honest. I sighed dramatically. Fine. I think just focusing on classwork is beneath me. I need something more stimulating. I signed up for a new extracurricular activity. His eyes narrowed. Your parents didn't make you, did they? Relax. It's something I actually wanted to do, I assured him. What is it? I'm not telling you, I said with a sly smile, leaning back with an air of mystery. But when you get back, I promise you'll be shocked. Alan raised an eyebrow, intrigued but playing along. All right, let's see just how much you can surprise me. The night before Alan's training camp, we gathered at our so-called secret base for dinner. Diana sighed dramatically, poking at her food. It's going to be a whole week without your cooking. Charles rolled his eyes, feigning disinterest. Big deal. It's not like it's that good anyway. Alan pushed his bowl away. If you don't like it, don't eat it. Charles gasped in mock horror. You've changed. I smirked, leaning forward. Changed to be more like you. The conversation felt light, but something tugged at the back of my mind. A lingering curiosity. I set down my chopsticks, locking eyes with Charles. Hey, Charles, sorry, husky. Did you really mean it when you said you liked me? His expression didn't waver. Of course I meant it. Why though? I tilted my head, still skeptical. What's the reason? Charles's face softened as he leaned back, his voice unusually nostalgic. We met before, you know. Back in elementary school. Don't you remember? I blinked. Not even a little. He exhaled, as though explaining a tale he'd held on to for years. Harry tricked me into sneaking out with Dad's phone, promising we'd go somewhere fun. I ended up stranded, waiting for hours. It got dark, and I had no idea how to get home. Then I ran into you. You told me to find a police officer and took me to the nearest station. That doesn't sound like me, I said, frowning. Are you sure it wasn't someone else? Charles sat up straight. I'm positive. You had that black stone around your neck. It was the same one. I choked on my drink. That stone? My mom bought it for me in high school. Said it was for protection or something. He froze, staring at me like his entire world had just been upended. No way. You're remembering it wrong. Diana snorted. He'd rather believe you forgot than admit he got the wrong person. Charles was relentless. You told me your name back then. That can't be a coincidence. Charles, I said, trying not to laugh. You know how many people share my name? Go ahead and Google it. His face crumpled, as if he'd just discovered Santa wasn't real. I don't believe it. And I don't remember it, I replied matter-of-factly. So there's that. It seemed like the night was about to wind down until Diana threw another curveball. Speaking of past confessions, let me clear something up. Charles and I? Not real love. Excuse me. Charles's voice cracked. What does that mean? Diana smirked, almost guilty but not quite. I only pursued you because you're rich. My mom had some gross deal lined up for me with a divorced guy. I figured dating you would stall her plans. Charles opened his mouth to speak but froze as Diana continued. After 2 months, I couldn't keep up the act. I confessed, and you helped me out. Pretended we were dating so my mom wouldn't push me anymore. I stared at them, piecing together the revelations. Wait, so, meeting your parents, this whole house thing? All part of the deal, Diana admitted, shrugging. He even made me promise not to tell you. Said if I backed out, the 4 of us would fall apart, and you two wouldn't make it. And the dolls in my room? The amusement park? I asked, suddenly connecting the dots. His ideas, but my coaching, she said smugly. I felt like a character in one of those convoluted novels I loved, where the twists kept coming. Turning to Alan, I narrowed my eyes. What about you? Anything you're hiding? Alan coughed, looking everywhere but at me. I'm sorry. Oh no. My heart sank. Sorry for what? He sighed, glancing around the room. You knew I was seeing a therapist, right? I nodded, feeling the tension rise. Well, Alan continued, shifting uncomfortably, I caught Charles spying on me outside the clinic once. You weren't even hiding properly, he muttered toward him. Charles stiffened. That's not. And Diana, I saw you notice the sleeping pills. Don't deny it. Alan's tone was almost accusatory. Diana flinched. Yeah, I saw. Alan turned his gaze on me next. And you? I didn't do anything, I said quickly, raising my hands in defense. You read my notebook, he stated flatly. I froze. How did you? I didn't know for sure, he said with a pointed look. Until now. I thought I was the only one who knew. My voice came out in a near whisper, trailing off as realization hit me. They all knew. Alan leaned back, his tone calm but laced with a kind of resigned honesty. My mom hated Diana. She called her all sorts of things. Maybe that's why I liked her so much at first. I told my therapist about it. How I thought I might like someone. His words hung in the air, and I gestured for him to go on. And the therapist asked if I really liked her, or if it was just because I wanted to defy my mom. Honestly, I didn't know. So the therapist suggested I figure out if it was genuine. Alan's gaze turned distant. That's when I went to Diana and said, I think I like you. Or maybe I don't. Can we try it out? Ha! So when Alan said he wanted to try things with Diana, that's what he meant. I blinked, processing. Diana's response was instant and cutting. She called me crazy. Well, that tracks, I muttered. Then she started chasing Charles like her life depended on it. I figured, okay, I'll just go with it when she suggested the four of us hang out. At least that gave me a chance to figure things out. And I prompted. He smirked, almost embarrassed. I even changed my profile picture to Diana's silhouette. Told my parents it was some artist's work. The thrill of getting away with it was exhilarating. I shook my head slowly, letting out a disbelieving laugh. Alan Alderton, you're unbelievable. It was absurd. No, scratch that, beyond absurd. This whole thing is ridiculous, I muttered, half to myself. But Charles wasn't laughing. His voice broke through, trembling. So, it was all fake? All of it. His eyes darted between me and Alan. You too. Don't tell me you're fake too. Alan and I exchanged a look but stayed silent. What is real then? Charles's voice cracked as he demanded answers. Alan, ever the peacemaker, placed a piece of meat on Charles's plate. The food is real. The notes are real. The house is real. The time we spent together. That was real. But Charles shook his head, unwilling to accept it. It was all wrong from the start. Diana raised an eyebrow, her voice sharp. What do you mean wrong? Did you think this was a romance? A real relationship? She rolled her eyes. You fell for someone over a rock. A rock. Charles. We didn't even kiss, hold hands, or, God forbid, flirt. What kind of love story is that? Charles stammered, clinging to whatever shred of hope he had. But what about our promises? Empty words, Diana replied bluntly. What about the group? All the time we spent together. Was that fake too? Without hesitation, Diana pulled out her phone and dissolved the group chat. Yep, fake. My head throbbed, and I regretted ever opening my mouth. Guys, please stop fighting. This is getting ridiculous. But Charles wasn't done. Fake or not, why was I the only one who gave my all? Because you miscalculated, Diana shot back, unflinching. Stop. I raised my voice, trying to get their attention. But Charles's spiraling continued. If you were going to lie to me, why not keep lying forever? He asked, tears brimming in his eyes. Because I just found out myself, Diana replied dryly. No one was listening to me. Frustrated, I stood on the chair, then climbed onto the table. Enough! That got their attention. All three of them turned to stare at me, wide-eyed. I took a deep breath, satisfied with the silence. Charles sniffled once before bolting for the door. Diana ran after him, shouting, Wait! Where are you going? Leave me alone! And just like that, it was down to me and Alan. We stared at each other, me glaring with all the intensity one could muster. Get off the table, he said finally. I checked my phone, relieved for an excuse. No need. My dad's here. I've got to go. As I walked out, I paused at the door, looking back. Good luck at the competition. Alan nodded. Wait for me. Later that night, I noticed Charles had changed his profile picture. It was a sad puppy, looking dejected. His bio read, It's all fake. His post, Is anything real anymore? I sighed, scrolling through the mess we'd made. Somehow, the ones who argued the most, Charles and Diana, seemed to get along best. All I wanted was a simple love story. Instead, I got chaos wrapped in a comedy of errors. Did this count as a breakup? Could you even break up something that never really existed? Alan once said this dynamic worked because it needed all four of us. What he didn't say was how fragile it was, how a single crack could shatter everything. And to think it all started with a stupid rock. My mom swore it was for protection, to keep bad energy away. What a joke. Life is never perfect. I have parents who love each other and a happy, well-off family. I'm smart, beautiful, kind-hearted, warm, witty, brave, well-read, stunningly charming, the full package. But there's one catch. I don't have long to live. I had leukemia when I was little. It went into remission for years, but in freshman year of high school, it came back. My blood type is rare, making it hard to find a match. And even if one is found, my chances of recovery aren't great. My parents, bless them, tried to hide it from me, insisting the odds were in my favor. But I'm not stupid. I knew better. I refused to waste my days stuck in a hospital bed. Each day of happiness felt like a gift, so I treasured them, knowing the number was finite. The candy jar I always carry? It's filled with pills. The nosebleeds? Just a side effect of being sick. Skipping exams, skipping school, and taking all those vacation days? They were for hospital visits. Even my doctor, a family friend, took turns scolding and worrying about me. The last time I saw him, he wagged a finger at me, eyes locked on my test results. You keep this up, and I'll have no choice but to admit you. I'll drag you here myself if I have to. I mumbled an apology while my dad stood off to the side, head bowed, quietly absorbing the reprimands meant for me. Yes, it's my fault, he said. Once the doctor left, my dad turned to me, eyes red but smiling. What do you want for dinner? I'll make it for you. I groaned, too tired to argue. I'm just gonna lie down for a bit. My mom brought over soup, fussing over me. Come on, one more sip. I'm stuffed, I muttered, turning my head away. Fine, I'll leave it here for later. Before falling asleep, I asked my mom about the life insurance policy I'd begged her to buy. You got it, right? I did. Stop worrying about that. I mumbled more instructions, half asleep. Don't waste money on me. Keep it for retirement. Stop talking nonsense. And don't think about having another kid, okay? You're not young anymore. No need to go through all that. I paused, my words slower now. I picked someone for you. She's really smart, beautiful, and can dance. Her parents are awful, way worse than you guys. She'll love you though. Just treat her like your own daughter. Before drifting off, I thought I heard muffled sobs. I couldn't be sure. Without me, Alan Alderton will finally take first place. He has this innate sense of morality, almost too much for his own good. His parents might be controlling, but they've never denied him material comforts. If he wants peace, he'll have to assert dominance in his family one day. It's the only way. Diana Rice will be fine. She knows how to cut toxic ties, tossing out what doesn't serve her. And Charles Collings? I think I still owe him a set of notes. Maybe I'll scribble a few pages together. He's got a tutor anyway. It'll be fine. My parents will probably be devastated. I've already calculated their savings and my dad's pension. Financially, they'll be fine. I made sure they have insurance, and if they adopt someone new, they won't be lonely. I've always had decent social skills, getting along with pretty much everyone. But I was never able to keep close friendships. My health always kept me from hanging out like other kids. I was meant to be a casual friend, not someone who could truly share in their lives. Still, these past few months have been happy. Genuinely happy. Extra. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was a luxury hospital suite. My mom sat beside me, her eyes red but her smile unwavering. It's okay now, sweetheart. It's okay. Above me, Alan Alderton's voice chimed in. Bella Beckinsale, you really know how to shock people. Then came the familiar ramblings of Charles Collings. I called the best doctors. Even pulled strings through my grandfather's network. And this VIP room? Not just anyone gets to stay here. But considering how exhausted our mom looked from taking care of you, I figured she needed the adjoining room to rest. Ah! There was a loud thud, like someone getting hit. Can you shut up? You're giving me a headache, Diana Rice muttered. I turned my head toward her voice. She was lying in the bed next to mine. Even after waking up, I didn't say much. Everything felt surreal. It wasn't until I noticed all their eyes fixed on me that I cleared my throat. You know, once, I had my fortune read under a bridge. The psychic said I'd live until I died. There was a pause. He didn't lie. Alan Alderton started bringing soup every day. His cooking was, as always, impeccable. After a month, though, I started dodging him. You drink it, I said, shoving the thermos toward Diana Rice. No, you. Just drink it already. That day, Alan arrived again, and I couldn't hold back my curiosity. Do you not study any more? How are you so free these days? He shrugged. Told my parents that if they stop pressuring me, I'll ace my exams and make them proud. But if they hit me again, I'll hand in a blank test. Bold, I said, impressed. He pulled up a chair and sat down, his tone turning businesslike. Now that you're recovering, let's talk finances. What? A pillow from Diana Rice flew across the room, hitting him squarely. If you'd told us sooner, we could have matched earlier. You'd have had the surgery earlier. Do you even realize how close you were to? Alan cut her off, his voice low. I read your books while you were unconscious. What? I froze, my face burning with humiliation. Let me guess. You wanted to keep everything a secret, quietly wait for death, and let us discover the truth too late. Then we'd be racked with guilt and spend the rest of our lives in regret. Charles Collings rolled his eyes. What kind of trashy novel is this? Enough! I snapped, burying my face in my hands. I've had enough of all of you. Just then, my mom returned with a bag of fruit. Here, have some fruit. I reached out, only for her to hand an orange to Diana instead. Thanks, Mom, Diana said, beaming. Then she handed a banana to Charles. Hey, thanks, Mom. Alan took a bite of an apple. Thanks, Mom. I froze. Excuse me? When Diana and I were fighting over the last strawberry, Charles suddenly burst into laughter. What now? I asked, startled. I found something hilarious. I'm sending it to the group chat. My stomach dropped. What group chat? The room went silent. Oh, Alan began, his eyes dotting. We made one while you were, unavailable. It's not like we meant to leave you out, Diana added quickly. You weren't awake yet. I let out a dry laugh. Right. So let me get this straight. 4 people, 5 group chats. Wait, Alan interrupted, catching on. 5. Diana blinked. Yeah, what do you mean 5? Charles started counting on his fingers. How many chats do we even have? Enough, I said, exasperated. We deleted all the old chats and decided to start fresh. Who's making the new one? They asked in unison. I will. I grabbed my phone, smirking. But hear me out. New chat, new beginnings. All past drama? Gone. They nodded in agreement. What do we call it? Diana asked. One big happy family? I suggested. Too cheesy. The 4 legends? Too dumb. The love-burying squad? Are you okay? Forget it, Alan said, sighing. We'll rename it later. Back at school, Diana threw herself into dance practice for her arts exam. Charles was busy catching up on his lessons. Alan worked diligently through practice tests, at a reasonable pace this time. As for me, I was swamped. Between studying with Alan, working out with Charles, and getting dragged to dance performances by Diana for artistic inspiration, my schedule was packed. During a self-study session, Alan suddenly asked, So, what do you want to study in college? I shrugged. Not sure. Any field without me would feel the loss. Modest. What about you? Medicine. Ugh, recommending med school? Heartless. One day during class, as Alan finished a worksheet and dozed off, I pulled out a cheesy novel to pass the time. I was halfway through when he suddenly jolted awake, startling me so badly I shoved the book into my desk. What's wrong with you? I hissed. I had a dream, he said, rubbing his eyes. About what? A world without you. Okay. I went to our mom, and she had another kid. I punched his arm. What nonsense are you spouting? I'm her one and only baby. The bell rang, and I grabbed his arm, pulling him along. Come on. Let's go find Diana and Charles. Fine. Fine. What do you want for lunch? The end.